It's not entirely rare and unheard of that I make a video concerning games or the gaming world, although obviously I'm not primarily a gaming channel. The logic I use here is that A, I am an avid gamer, or at the very least a somewhat enthusiastic gamer, and based on my knowledge, many, if not the majority of my subs are also gamers. Of course, there are people who are not gamers, and they tend to not click on these videos, and that's perfectly understandable. Just want to make that clear at the beginning. And before I proceed into the meat and bones of the video, I want to ask a question in a survey manner, because what I've long considered, and something that I'm thinking about doing at some point in time in the future, is creating an entirely separate gaming channel. Now, I do have an ancient one, but it's effectively defunct, and there are problems with it, and so I can't go back to that. But basically, a channel that would be almost solely dedicated to gaming. And inasmuch as you offer comments on this, let me know what you think about that idea, if you have an interest, if you would subscribe, and if you would watch or listen. And that will give me an idea if that would be a beneficial idea to both you and me. With that said, this will be a gaming video. It goes without saying that the past year, particularly late 2018 and this past month of January, have been absolutely calamitous regarding AAA gaming. I don't think we've seen in recent times a series of screw-ups of the scale we have seen. Of course, the big one is Bethesda, which has just been a never-ending stream of failures since the release of Fallout. I don't want to go through everything in detail, but of course, you had the release itself. Buggy, incomplete, problematic. You had the duffel bag controversy, where they were engaging in false advertising. After that, you had the rum bottle controversy, where they were advertising a collector's item that looked like a high-quality Nuka-Cola rum glass bottle that turned out to be a plastic case, effectively worth a piece of dog shit. And then you had numerous patches, including a very recent one, which seemed to have made the game regress and made it worse than it actually was previously. Cover-ups on Reddit trying to delete posts, and now they're trying to sell overly inflated leather jackets, I think close to $300. It's been a colossal series of fuck-ups, without a doubt. On top of that, you have the Activision reveal. It's revealed by Blizzard that they were going to release Diablo, but it was only going to be on mobile games. And when gamers and devoted fans and customers of the Diablo franchise responded, they were asked the simple question of whether or not they had a phone. A bit insulting, not exactly what I would call high-quality customer service. And you have the eternal saga of EA and the upcoming game of Anthem, microtransactions, and everything seems topsy-turvy in the AAA gaming world. And what I don't want to make this video about is what has become, I would argue, a definitive genre in the gaming YouTube community, and that is negative outrage gaming reporting. We all know what I'm talking about, I think. There are many channels that are engaged in a constant barrage of never-ending criticism of what's going on at the moment. I understand it. I think it's partially justified. And even channels that I watch on a semi-regular basis, which would include It's a Gundam and The Quartering and Young Yeah. These are channels which basically are now thriving on, for lack of a better term, concern gaming posts, which is fine. I get it. There's a need. And it's just human nature to boot, right? People don't pay attention to positive news. I think it would be very rare if you had a report on a petting zoo and the joy it brought to children that would be a newsworthy story. It's far better to report a massive forest fire where people's lives are consumed and their properties destroyed. It's just bad news sells. It's the same with games. It's no different. I wanted to offer in the beginning a bit of a reiteration of some of the things that are ongoing. But what I want to do differently from a lot of the disaster and concern reporting in terms of gaming is offer my own perspective on some of the potentially positive things that may come into being in light of the current darkness in the AAA gaming crisis. And make no mistake, there is a crisis. I do agree with that assessment. There are massive problems. You can add to that Metro, which is very controversial due to Deep Silver's replies, the fact that they claim that they wouldn't release on PC as a threat, the removal of their forthcoming game, Metro Exodus, from Steam to the exclusivity of Epic Games, and so on and so forth. It's all been covered, it's all been talked about, but I do think there are some rays of light in the darkness here, and that's what I want to talk about. I think not too different from the way seasons work. When the detritus of fallen leaves of autumn and winter when this gives rise to spring, and you see new life, when new life comes into the world, when youth engages in its youthful passion, as it were, we're going to see something good come about in the next few years. Now, I'm not a prophet, I'm not a seer, I'm not a clairvoyant. I'm not claiming this will happen definitively, I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying there is a chance this may happen. Because we have to think about how this came about. How did this come about? Well, typically, what happens and what has happened with gaming companies is that it starts off with passion, it starts off with creative drive, and then as they grow bigger and bigger, these things become corrupted, they become run-of-the-mill, they become status quo. That's fairly normal. That seems almost standard procedure. Human bodies break down over time. We get old, we wither and die. And so too do gaming companies. They start off with passion, with enthusiasm. They push things forward. BioWare is a great example of that. Bethesda is a great example of that. And over time, they become corrupted by the forces of human nature itself, by the forces of the market itself. They become run-of-the-mill. They seek to attract the biggest audience possible, to grab as much attention as possible. And the creativity, the passion, and the nicheness, let us gentlemen consider the nicheness out of which many of these games arose. The Elder Scrolls, the original Elder Scrolls, which arose in the 1990s. Games like Diablo and the original BioWare games, they were kind of niche. They weren't trying to cater to every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Jane in the world, obviously, but they were corrupted by these forces. Well, where there's corruption, there's also redemption. But the redemption is not to be found, in my view, in the companies that are now corrupt and dying. They are going to continue to wither and die. I see no hope for Bethesda, for Blizzard, for BioWare, or any of these companies that we formerly enjoyed and appreciated and even loved in some regards. But I do see light in the darkness for a new vanguard. Now, at this juncture, I want to make honorable mention of CD Projekt RED. No, I'm not a fanboy. I like The Witcher 3 a great deal. I think it is a great game, although it did have flaws. But the customer service on the part of CD Projekt RED has been, in the area of AAA gaming, largely unprecedented in terms of its customer service, in terms of its dedication to the customer. Of course, I've heard bad things about their workflow and the work process if you're actually working at CD Projekt RED. I don't have a lot to say about that. I'm a customer of theirs. I don't work at their institution. That's different. Maybe they suck in that regard. But free DLC, dedicated patches that improve things a great deal, rich expansions that in many regards overtake the original story in terms of quality and storytelling. Yes, I think it's safe to say they have excellent customer service. And we also have to think about the humble origins. CD Projekt RED came to light in a market that had already been a pretty big one. By the time Witcher came out in 2007, if I recall, the original Witcher, there was already a pretty big gaming market. Whereas some of these other companies were out of the blue. When BioWare first released games such as Baldur's Gate, there wasn't a huge gaming market. And so CD Projekt RED really struggled. They had to go through things, hurdles, if you will, that not every company has gone through. I think that's part of the reason, that's just my opinion, they have managed to maintain a certain customer company ethos that is lacking in many of the other AAA gaming companies. And I think because of that, they're able to maintain this consistently, and they will likely deliver the same level of excellent customer service and dedication with the release of Cyberpunk 2077, whenever that comes out. My prediction is 2020, given the fact that the original tabletop game was called Cyberpunk 2020. So I want to get that out of the way. I think they will remain consistent based on probability, based on their humble origins, based on the struggles they engaged in a way you're not going to find in other AAA gaming companies or developers. Now here's the thing. It's not just about CD Projekt RED. With the announcement of Diablo on mobile and the middle finger that was effectively given to many people that expected a proper Diablo game, loyal fans, loyal players, many people left Diablo. They went to go play Path of Exile. Many people discovered a game that I enjoy on occasion, I'm a bit of a noob, Grim Dawn, which is another action loot-based RPG that I like playing with a friend of mine and play on my own on occasion. They discovered something new. So what I'm saying now is that, yes, there is a great deal of darkness in the AAA gaming world. Yes, there are many failures. There is dishonesty, there's cupidity, there are many disingenuous business practices that are ongoing, sure. But I do see the opportunity for companies, forthcoming companies, or companies that already exist and are small, to emerge from the darkness as rays of light. And why do I say that? When you have repeated failures on multiple fronts across multiple gaming developers and companies and publishers, you have a golden opportunity to present yourself differently to the world if you're not those people, if you're not those developers, if you're not those publishers. And you can say, look at me, guys, here I am doing things differently. I'm going to give you better customer service. I'm not going to engage in loot box controversy or loot box ripoffs. I am not going to engage in DRM. I'm not going to do all of these things that you've typically come to expect from the mainstream because I want to differentiate myself. And this opportunity, I think, will be seized in the future. I think a good example of this is Obsidian. Obsidian is not perfect. It has its flaws, without a doubt. They tend to release buggy games. I think that's the first and major flaw I can think of when I think of Obsidian. But with the coming release of Outer Worlds, which appears to be some type of Fallout-esque outer space adventure, the fact that they've been bought up by Microsoft, which may or may not be a good thing, I certainly have my misgivings, specifically with regards to Pillars of Eternity, because I'm a huge fan of that series. I've been modding that game actively, learning modding, playing it, etc., in as much as Microsoft allows them the freedom. Well, that is an example of a developer that can really shine above the rest. We already saw the trailer for Outer Worlds, whether it's your genre or not, and I have to say it's not exactly my genre, although I'm very open to the idea of playing and purchasing the game. They probably will have decent business practices. How do I know? Well, perhaps in imitation of CD Projekt RED, there were many free DLC packages released for the game Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Despite not having a huge amount of funds, despite it being crowdfunded, and I was one of the crowdfunders, that other companies will rise, including Obsidian. CD Projekt RED will be consistent, hopefully, to show the world that we can make good games, we can make profit, and we don't need to fuck you over in the process. We don't need to give you the middle finger. We don't need to create shortcuts. We don't need to be dishonest. We don't need to engage in shady business practices. I think this is a distinct possibility. Do I think this is going to happen definitively? No, I really don't. I'm not a prophet, as I said. But I do think all the colossal failures of AAA gaming, this darkness that we've been enshrouded in, this creates a huge opportunity for momentum going forward for little guys, little developers, publishers, and for bigger ones too, to show the world that they're different, to create new customer bases, to create a new type of AAA gaming world potentially down the line that will be so differentiated from what we've come to know. And because of the way in which they emerge, I'm not saying they're immune to corruption, they're much more likely to remain consistent and steadfast in the same way that CD Projekt RED has to date, remained so. And I think with all the outrage video game reporting and concern reporting, this is something potentially positive, and I'm not known for my positivity, as most of you might know, that we can think about and talk about. I think there will be tremendous opportunities in the coming years for new lights to emerge from the darkness, to show us that they are different, that they can be successful, that they can make good games that we have fun with, that enrapture us, that pull us in ways perhaps hitherto unknown, that we have not seen in the past, and all do it in a legitimate way that brings about our recognition, our appreciation, and that classic line you almost never hear anymore. And that line is, please take my money. So opportunity knocks but once, as is said, and let me know what you think in the comment section. And again, I would remind you, if you have any response whatsoever, positive or negative, to a separate gaming channel, which I've considered for a long time, do let me know. And until then, may the gods watch over you and you enjoy your week. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.